How do you know when a quote becomes popular? Some people say that it happens when the text is turned into a song. Songs are a great combination of poetry and music. It is as if you speak two languages at the same time. One is language of lyrics, of the text, and the other one is the language of music. A good song is when the two tell the same story. But great songs are those where music and lyrics complement each other. From quite early on Jewish history, the Torah was sung, not just read. Initially, different traditions were developed in Israel and Babylon, and from around the 10th century of the Common Era, the musical tradition of chanting the Torah have been standardized in the form that is familiar to us today, the musical notations known as the Amei Amikra, or the cantillation marks. You will be able to see them on your screen. This system was codified by the Tiberian Masoretic family, who served as guardians of Judaism's sacred text and introduced a universally accepted version of the vowels, punctuation, and musical notation in the Torah. You see the musical notation now, and the letter bet represents any letter or any word. What is important is what is above or below the letter. The way we sing cantillation marks depends on where you are, but the notes are the same in all Jewish communities around the world. A good example of cantillation marks is what we hear in our synagogues as the third paragraph of Shema, and tonight I also chanted the first paragraph. Among Tamei Mikra, there is a rare symbol called Shellet, which means chain in Hebrew. It appears in the Torah only 4 times. Each time it is a sign of existential crisis. 3 out of 4 instances are in the book of Genesis. Perhaps the most famous Shellet can be found in the story of Joseph. Sold by his brothers as a slave, he was working in the house of Potiphar, an Egyptian person in power. And one day, when Joseph was alone in the house with his master's wife, he finds himself the object of her desire. According to the Torah text, he refused and didn't give up to his temptation. However, cantillation marks tell a different story. Over the word refused is a Shellet. Some rabbinic sources and medieval commentators suggest that Joseph had to make a considerable effort to fight the desire within himself. Although the text itself is unambiguous, the way we deliver it, the way we sing it, suggests an inner struggle with Joseph. And in the British version of the tradition, the Shellet sounds as Shellet. And you can see the ambiguity and inner struggle in the music. The same sign appears in this week's Torah portion, Tzav. After building the tabernacle, the symbol of the divine presence in the midst of people, Moses is about to induct his brother Aaron and Aaron's sons into priesthood. He robes Aaron with the special garments of the high priest, anoints him with oil, and performs the various sacrifices appropriate to the occasion. The last Shellet in the Torah appears over the word Vayishchat, and he slaughtered the sacrificial ram. We know that the Shellet signifies an inner struggle, an ambivalence and uncertainty there seems to be no struggle here. It's just a description of the ritual or ceremony. The Talmud offers an explanation. In Tractate Zevachim, which deals with sacrifices, rabbis saw this story as a decisive moment for Moses. It was at this time when he, the only leader of Jewish people so far, had to clarify and limit his role. Before Aaron became the high priest, Moses occupied all possible leadership roles. He was the military general, the one responsible for food and water supply, the only communicator with God, the supreme judge, and the key spiritual leader. From now on, he delegated a part of his responsibilities, the priesthood, spiritual leadership, to Aaron and his sons. The Talmud presents it as a punishment for not accepting his mission at the burning bush episode, when Moses had repeatedly resisted God's call to lead the people. Eventually, God told him that Aaron would go with him, helping him to speak. The Talmud says that at that moment Moses lost the chance to be a priest. However, I would suggest that this was the blessing for Moses and for people. Today we know that having one leader for a long period of time can be dangerous. I should say one uncontrolled leader for a long period of time. There is a reason why political leaders should change, and there is a reason why religion should be separate from the state. Both systems, the separation of religion and state and delegation of some power to others, has been introduced at the time when Aaron became the high priest. Giving up the power and leaving the space for others is difficult and often triggers an inner struggle. This turmoil is reflected in Shellet at the key moment of Aaron's induction. Moses had to overcome his inner struggle and realize his limitations. As a rabbi, sometimes I think that when I write something or speak, there should be a Shellet above my words. I often have an inner struggle and ask myself, do I speak about politics from the pulpit or not? How do I become not too involved in nuances of politics if I decide to speak out about an important social issue? Where is the line between being a religious leader who is concerned about social justice and a political activist who is taking radical steps to change the society? Can I openly take sides in a political debate? This week, I had to ask these questions again, this time about my relationship with Israel. This week, Israel had its fourth election in 2 years. There is a complex inner struggle in the Israeli society, and the clear marker of it is the fact that most likely there will be the fifth election in the near future. On the one hand, the results of this election is a hope for religious freedom and pluralism in Israel, as the first progressive rabbi has been elected as a member of Knesset. On the other hand, it is a reason to be concerned, as some radical Jewish nationalists and racists have been elected too. It has been a long time that the Israeli society has been avoiding facing important questions. One of them is what it means to have a Jewish and a democratic state at the same time. What role the diaspora Jews can play in the Israeli future. I am standing in a beautiful sanctuary of the Liberal Jewish Synagogue, and the walls around me are made of Jerusalem stone. There is a silent question that these walls are asking. Is it a symbol of building Jerusalem here in London and not in the land of Israel? Or is it a symbol of a dream and political statement because these walls were built by a team of Israelis and Palestinians working together? Perhaps both are true. Perhaps these walls are telling two stories, like a song with a good poetry, and where a good poetry and music complement each other. Complexity and coexistence of voices is what makes this world great and inclusive. We can only hope that the modern world, together with Israel and other countries, will overcome its pride, its inner struggle, its Shellet, and come to a peaceful coexistence. Some of you might be convinced that this vision is an impossible utopia, but the vision of the State of Israel used to be that vision shared by a few leaders, until people decided that if we want it to happen, it will no longer be just a dream. Im tirtzu ein zu agada. This week, conveniently close to Pesach, Suez Canal got blocked by a large cargo ship near Egypt. One may say that we became witnesses of a biblical story coming true in front of our eyes. Today there is a walking path in the middle of the Red Sea. If this is possible, let's hope that some other biblical visions will come true one day too. The one that says that people will be in peace with one another. There will be no war, no hunger, no oppression of the vulnerable, of the refugee, and the one that says that Israel can be the light to all the nations. Bimhira b'yameinu ken yehi ratzon. May this be God's will. May this vision come true in our days. Amen. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Pesach Sameach.